The clock on the wall showed 9:30 p.m. when Rosa pulled her cleaning cart through the automatic doors of Terminal 4. She had been doing this same routine for 12 years now, and her body knew every step by heart. Push the cart to the left, start with the bathrooms, then move to the food court area, and finish with the gate seating areas before midnight. At 54, Rosa's hands were rough from years of scrubbing and wiping. Her back ached most days, but she never complained. This job at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport paid her bills and helped her send money back home to her family in Mexico. She took pride in keeping the terminal clean, even though most travelers barely noticed her as they rushed past with their suitcases and boarding passes. December nights in Phoenix could get surprisingly cold, and tonight was no different. The airport stayed warm inside, which Rosa appreciated. She started her rounds, methodically cleaning each restroom, emptying trash cans and mopping floors. The terminal was quieter than during the day, but there were still plenty of people waiting for late flights or early morning departures. As she pushed her cart near gate A15, something caught her eye. A small figure sat alone on one of the hard plastic chairs, hunched over with his arms wrapped around a worn backpack. It was a young boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old. His clothes looked too big for his thin frame, and his sneakers had holes near the toes. Rosa had seen many children in the airport over the years, but they were usually with families, chattering excitedly about vacations or visits to grandparents. This boy was different. He sat perfectly still, watching the planes through the tall windows with an expression that seemed too serious for someone his age. She continued her cleaning, but kept glancing back at him. Where were his parents? Why was he sitting alone so late at night? The security guards had walked past him twice during her first hour of work, but they didn't seem concerned. Maybe he was waiting for someone. An hour passed. Rosa had finished cleaning 3 gate areas, but the boy hadn't moved. He shifted positions occasionally, pulling his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders, but he stayed in that same spot. Now she was genuinely worried. Rosa wasn't the type to interfere in other people's business. She had learned to keep her head down and focus on her work. But something about this child tugged at her heart. She thought of her own grandchildren back in Guadalajara, safe and warm in their beds at this hour. She parked her cart and walked over to where the boy sat. Up close, she could see he was even thinner than she had thought. His eyes were large and dark, with a hungry look that reminded her of stray dogs she used to feed behind her childhood home. "Hola, mijo," she said softly, using the Spanish word for my son that came naturally to her. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up, startled. For a moment, she thought he might run away. Instead, he nodded quickly and looked down at his hands. "Do you speak English?" Rosa asked, struggling with the words. Her English wasn't perfect, but she had picked up enough over the years to communicate with travelers who needed help. "Yes, ma'am," the boy replied quietly. His voice was polite but tired. "Where is your mama?" "Your papa?" Rosa asked, sitting down in the chair next to him. She kept her voice gentle, the same tone she used with frightened children who had gotten lost in the terminal. The boy hesitated before answering. "My mom is working. She'll pick me up later." Something in his tone told Rosa there was more to the story. She had raised 5 children of her own, and had helped raise numerous grandchildren. She knew when a child wasn't telling the whole truth, not out of dishonesty, but out of learned necessity. "What's your name?" she asked. "David," he said, finally looking up at her. His eyes were intelligent and kind, but there was a weariness there that no child should carry. "I'm Rosa. I clean here every night." She smiled at him. "Are you hungry, David?" The question seemed to surprise him. He started to shake his head no, but his stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. His cheeks turned red with embarrassment. Rosa's heart clenched. She recognized that look, that proud hunger. She had worn it herself as a child, when her family had very little and asking for help felt like admitting defeat. "Wait here," she told David. "I'll be right back." Rosa walked back to her cart where she kept her lunch bag. She always packed extra food, a habit from her days of raising children when you never knew who might need a meal. Tonight she had brought 2 sandwiches, an apple, and a small container of rice and beans left over from dinner. When she returned, David was still sitting in the same spot, but his eyes followed her movements with cautious hope. "Here," she said, unwrapping one of the sandwiches. "Ham and cheese. My grandson's favorite." David stared at the sandwich for a long moment. "I don't have any money to pay you." "Did I ask for money?" Rosa replied with a smile. "Eat," Slowly, David reached for the sandwich. The first bite seemed to unlock something in him, and he ate quickly but carefully as if he was trying to make it last as long as possible. Rosa watched him, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. "Good?" she asked. David nodded, his mouth full. After he swallowed, he said, "Thank you. This is really good." Rosa opened the container of rice and beans and handed him a plastic spoon. "More food. You're too skinny." As David ate, Rosa continued her cleaning work, but she stayed close to his area. She learned that he was in 5th grade and that he liked math and science. He told her about the planes he watched, how he had memorized the different types and airlines. He spoke with the enthusiasm that children show for their favorite subjects, and Rosa found herself genuinely interested in what he had to say. When her break was over, she gave David the apple and promised to check on him later. As she pushed her cart to the next section, she couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Where was his mother, really? Why was he spending his evening in an airport instead of at home? 2 hours later, when Rosa returned to that area for her final cleaning round, David was asleep in the chair, his backpack clutched tightly to his chest. She found a lost and found blanket from her cart and gently covered him, being careful not to wake him up. Standing there, watching this child sleep alone in an airport terminal, Rosa made a decision. Tomorrow night she would bring extra food again. And if David was here, she would make sure he didn't go hungry. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change both of their lives forever. The next evening, Rosa packed her dinner with extra care. Along with her usual sandwich, she added another one with turkey and cheese, cut an extra apple into slices, and filled a small thermos with the chicken soup she had made that afternoon. She told herself she was just being prepared, but deep down she hoped to see David again. Her hope was answered when she spotted the familiar small figure in the same chair near gate A15 tonight. He had a textbook open on his lap and was writing in a notebook under the bright terminal lights. Rosa felt a mixture of relief and sadness seeing him there. "Hello, David," she said as she approached with her cart. He looked up and his face brightened immediately. "Hi, Rosa. You came back." "Of course I came back. I work here every night, remember?" She sat down beside him. "What are you studying?" "Math homework," David said, showing her the page filled with multiplication problems. "We're learning times tables. I like numbers. They always make sense." Rosa looked at his neat handwriting and the careful way he solved each problem. "You're very smart. Are you good at school?" David nodded. "I try to be. My mom says education is the most important thing. She works really hard so I can go to a good school." There was that mention of his mother again. Rosa decided to be more direct this time. "Where does your mama work?" David hesitated, then seemed to decide that Rosa could be trusted. "She works 3 jobs. During the day, she cleans offices. In the evening, she works at a hotel near here. And on weekends, she works at a restaurant. 3 jobs?" Rosa was amazed. "That's a lot of work. She says we need to save money. We want to move to California where there are better opportunities." David's voice carried a maturity that made Rosa's heart ache. "She drops me here because it's safe and warm and I can do my homework. The hotel is just down the street so she can pick me up when her shift ends around midnight." Now Rosa understood. This wasn't neglect or abandonment. This was a mother doing whatever it took to provide for her child, and an airport terminal was safer than leaving him alone at home. Rosa knew about such sacrifices. She had made plenty of her own over the years. "What about your papa?" Rosa asked gently. David's expression grew sad. "He died 2 years ago. There was an accident at the factory where he worked. That's why we had to move here from California. Mom couldn't afford the rent there anymore." Rosa's throat tightened with emotion. This brave little boy and his hard-working mother were fighting their own battle, just like so many other families she had known. Without a word, she pulled out the thermos of soup and the extra sandwich. "I brought too much food again," she said casually. "Would you help me eat it?" David's eyes lit up, but he tried to be polite. "Are you sure? I don't want to take your dinner. Trust me, if you don't eat this soup, I'll just have to throw it away. I made too much." Rosa handed him the thermos cup filled with warm chicken soup. As David ate, Rosa learned more about him. His full name was David Chen. He was 10 years old and in the 5th grade at Lincoln Elementary School. His favorite subjects were math and science, and he dreamed of becoming an engineer someday. He wanted to build bridges or maybe work with airplanes. Airplanes? Rosa asked, interested. Yeah. I watch them take off and land from here every night. Did you know that the big ones can carry over 400 people? And they fly at 35,000 feet high. It's amazing how something so heavy can fly through the air. Rosa listened to David explain the basics of flight, with the enthusiasm only a child could have. She didn't understand all the technical words he used, but she loved seeing his face light up when he talked about his dreams. Over the following weeks, their evening routine became established. Rosa would arrive at work and find David at his chair, doing homework or reading library books. She would share her dinner with him, and they would talk while she took her breaks. David helped Rosa practice English words she heard from travelers while she taught him Spanish phrases. ¿Cómo estás, David? Rosa would ask each evening. Muy bien, gracias, Rosa. ¿Y tú? David would respond with improving pronunciation. Rosa introduced David to other airport employees during her rounds. There was Miguel, the security guard, who began nodding approvingly when he saw Rosa and David together. Isabel from the information desk started saving interesting newspaper articles about science and technology for David to read. Even Carlos, the night janitor for Terminal 3, began stopping by to check on Rosa's boy when he had breaks. These small acts of community kindness created a warm bubble of caring in the vast, impersonal space of the airport. David was no longer just a lone child waiting in the terminal. He was part of an unofficial family of night shift workers who looked out for each other. One evening in January, David arrived with excitement written all over his face. He could barely sit still as Rosa approached with her cart. Rosa, look at this. He waved a paper in the air. It was his report card. All A's and 1 B+. Mijo, this is wonderful. Rosa hugged him tightly. You are so smart. Your mama must be very proud. She cried when she saw it, David said happily. Good tears, though. She said my papa would be proud, too. Rosa felt tears in her own eyes. I'm proud of you too, David. Very, very proud. That night, Rosa used her tip money from the travelers she had helped to buy David a small calculator from the airport gift shop. When she gave it to him, he looked at it like it was made of gold. This is for me? Really. Every engineer needs a good calculator. David spent the rest of the evening showing Rosa all the different functions on the calculator, his face glowing with joy. It wasn't an expensive gift, but to him it represented something much bigger. It represented someone believing in his dreams. As the weeks passed, Rosa noticed changes in David. His posture was straighter, his smile came more easily, and he spoke with growing confidence about his future plans. He had started talking about specific colleges he wanted to attend, and the types of engineering that interested him most. I want to study aerospace. Engineering, he told Rosa one evening as they watched a large jetliner taxi toward the runway. I want to design planes that are safer and use less fuel. Maybe I can help make flying better for everyone. Rosa listened to his dreams with wonder. She had left school after the 2nd grade to help support her family, but she recognized intelligence and ambition when she saw it. David had both in abundance. One February evening, Rosa arrived at work to find David sitting unusually quietly in his chair. He wasn't doing homework or reading. He was just staring out the window with a worried expression. What's wrong, mijo? Rosa asked, sitting beside him. David was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke in a small voice. My mom lost one of her jobs. The office building where she cleaned got a new company that brings their own cleaning crew. Rosa felt her heart sink. She knew what this might mean. We might have to move, David continued. Mom found a cheaper apartment, but it's far from here. She won't be able to bring me to the airport anymore, and she can't afford after-school care. Rosa pulled David closer and hugged him. For months, she had watched this boy grow and flourish. The thought of him disappearing from her life was almost unbearable. When? She asked quietly. Maybe next week. Mom is trying to find another job first, but she says we might not have a choice. That night, Rosa could barely concentrate on her work. She had grown to love David like one of her own grandchildren. The airport wouldn't be the same without him. The following week brought the news Rosa had been dreading. David's mother, Li Wei, had found a small apartment in a neighborhood across town. The rent was much cheaper, but it was too far from the airport for their evening routine to continue. Worse yet, Li Wei would have to take a different job with earlier hours, which meant David would need to go straight home after school. On what would be David's last evening at the airport, Rosa arrived at work with a heavy heart. She had spent the previous night thinking about what she could do to help, but her options were limited. She was a night shift janitor with her own bills to pay and family to support. She couldn't change David's circumstances much as she wanted to. David was waiting in his usual spot, but tonight was different. His backpack was fuller than usual, stuffed with all the library books he had borrowed and the few personal items he kept at the airport. His notebook was closed on his lap and he wasn't working on homework. Instead, he was staring out at the planes with tears in his eyes. "Hello, Mijo," Rosa said softly as she sat down beside him. "Hi, Rosa." His voice was barely above a whisper. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching a large plane push back from the gate. David had taught Rosa to identify different aircraft over the months, and she recognized this one as a Boeing 737, one of David's favorites because he said it was reliable and efficient. "I'm going to miss this," David said finally. "I'm going to miss watching the planes. I'm going to miss doing homework here. I'm going to miss you." Rosa felt tears burning her eyes. "I'm going to miss you too, David. More than you know." "The new apartment doesn't have good light for homework," David continued. "And the neighborhood is loud. Mom says I need to be careful walking home from school because it's not as safe as here." Rosa's heart broke thinking about David leaving this bright, secure space to spend his evenings in a place where he had to worry about his safety. But she also understood Li Wei's position. Sometimes you had to make difficult choices to survive. "Your mama is very brave," Rosa told him. "She's doing the best she can for both of you. And you know what? You're brave too." David looked at her with surprise. "I don't feel brave. I feel scared." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Rosa explained. "It means you keep going even when you are scared. You and your mama, you both keep going no matter what happens. That's real courage." Rosa had brought David's favorite meal tonight, her homemade chicken soup, a turkey sandwich, and sliced apples with cinnamon. But she had also brought something else, something she had spent the whole previous night thinking about. "David," she said, reaching into her uniform pocket, "I have something for you." She pulled out a small silver cross on a thin chain. The metal was worn smooth from years of wear, and the chain was slightly tarnished, but it gleamed softly under the airport lights. "This was my mother's," Rosa said, holding the necklace carefully. "She gave it to me when I was about your age, when I had to leave school to help my family. She told me that no matter where life took me, no matter how hard things got, I should remember that I was loved and that I was strong enough to handle whatever came next." David stared at the cross with wide eyes. "Rosa, I can't take this. It's too important. That's exactly why I want you to have it." Rosa gently placed the chain around David's neck and fastened the clasp. "My mother has been gone for 15 years now, but I carry her love with me every day. Now I want you to carry mine with you too." David touched the cross with trembling fingers. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't give up on your dreams. I don't care how hard things get, how impossible they seem. You're going to be an engineer someday, David. I know it in my heart. And when you are, I want you to remember that there was once an old cleaning lady who believed in you completely." David threw his arms around Rosa and hugged her tightly. She could feel his small body shaking with emotion. "I promise," he whispered into her shoulder. "I promise I won't give up. And I promise I'll never forget you." They spent the rest of the evening talking about David's plans for the future. He told Rosa about the engineering programs at different universities that he had researched at the school library. He had learned that MIT and Stanford had the best aerospace engineering programs, and he had already started thinking about what he would need to do to get accepted. "You know what?" Rosa said as they watched another plane take off. "Someday you're going to design planes that are even better than these. And when I see them in the sky, I'm going to tell everyone, I know the man who built that plane. I fed him soup when he was 10 years old." David laughed through his tears. "You really think I can do it?" "Mijo, I don't think you can do it. I know you can do it. You have something special inside you. You're smart, you work hard, and you never give up. Those are the most important things any engineer can have." As closing time approached, Rosa helped David gather his things. Li Wei would be picking him up soon for the last time. Rosa had never met David's mother, but she felt a deep respect for this woman who was sacrificing so much for her son's future. "Will you tell your mama something for me?" Rosa asked as they waited by the pickup area. "Sure. Tell her that she's raising an amazing boy. Tell her that she should be very proud of the son she has. And tell her that an old lady at the airport will be praying for both of you every single day. A small car pulled up to the curb, and Rosa could see a tired-looking woman in the driver's seat. This had to be Li Wei. Even from a distance, Rosa could see the exhaustion in her posture, the weight of responsibility she carried. David hugged Rosa one more time. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for the food and the talks and for believing in me. I won't forget any of it. And I won't forget you, David Chen, future aerospace engineer." David walked toward the car, then turned back one more time. "Rosa, yes? Someday I'm going to come back. And when I do, I'm going to take you flying in the most beautiful airplane you've ever seen." Rosa smiled through her tears. "I'll be waiting for that flight, mijo. I'll be waiting." She watched the small car drive away into the night, taking David out of her daily life but never out of her heart. As Rosa returned to her cleaning cart, she touched her neck where her mother's cross used to rest. Now it was keeping David safe, carrying with it all of her hopes and prayers for his future. The terminal felt different without David there. Rosa continued her work, but Gate A15 seemed empty now. Just another seating area instead of the special place where dreams had been shared and encouraged. That night, as Rosa finished her shift, she made her own promise. She would never forget the brave little boy who had taught her that kindness could change a life, and she would spend the rest of her days hoping that somewhere out there, David was still reaching for the stars, still believing in the impossible dreams that had once seemed as unreachable as the planes flying high above the desert sky. 12 years passed like pages turning in a long book. Rosa continued working her night shift at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, though the years had added new aches to her joints and silver streaks to her dark hair. At 66, she often thought about retirement, but the airport had become her second home, and the routine gave structure to her life. The terminal had changed dramatically since David's time there. New restaurants had opened, technology kiosks appeared everywhere, and even the gate furniture had been updated with charging ports and more comfortable seating. But Gate A15 remained special to Rosa. Every night when she cleaned that area, she remembered the thin boy who used to sit there with his homework, dreaming of building airplanes. Rosa often wondered what had happened to David. In quiet moments during her breaks, she would look out at the planes and hope that somewhere in the world he was doing well. She still wore a simple chain around her neck, though it felt different without her mother's cross. Sometimes she would touch her throat and send up a silent prayer for the boy who had become such an important part of her life. Meanwhile, across the country, David Chen was living a life that would have seemed impossible to that hungry 10-year-old in the airport. The small silver cross still hung around his neck, tucked beneath the collars of expensive shirts and hidden under the academic robes he had worn at graduation ceremonies. The years after leaving the airport had been difficult at first. The new neighborhood was indeed rougher than Li Wei had hoped, and David had to learn to navigate different challenges. But Rosa's words had stayed with him. Whenever things got tough, whenever it seemed like his dreams were too big for his circumstances, he would touch the cross and remember the cleaning lady who had believed in him completely. David had thrown himself into his studies with remarkable determination. His grades remained excellent throughout middle school and high school, despite the distractions of their new environment. He spent countless hours at the public library, staying there until closing time to avoid the chaos of their small apartment building. He applied for every scholarship and academic program he could find. His hard work paid off when he received a full academic scholarship to MIT. Li Wei cried when the acceptance letter arrived, remembering all the nights she had worked extra shifts so David could focus on school instead of worrying about money. At MIT, David studied aerospace engineering with the same intensity he had once brought to his elementary school homework. He was fascinated by every aspect of flight, from the basic physics of lift and thrust to the complex computer systems that guided modern aircraft. His professors quickly recognized his talent and dedication. During his junior year, David's research project on fuel efficiency in commercial aircraft caught the attention of both his advisors and industry professionals. He had developed a new approach to engine design that could reduce fuel consumption by nearly 15% while maintaining safety standards. The work was so impressive that he was invited to present it at a major aerospace engineering conference. After graduating with highest honors, David was recruited by Boeing, where he joined their advanced research division. His innovative thinking and tireless work ethic quickly earned him recognition within the company. Within 3 years, he had been promoted twice and had his name on several important patents. But David had bigger dreams than working for someone else's company. He had never forgotten the boy who used to watch planes from an airport terminal, imagining what it would be like to create something that could soar through the sky. In his late 20s, he made the bold decision to start his own aerospace consulting firm. Chen Aerospace Solutions began in a small rented office with just David and 2 other engineers. Their focus was on developing more efficient and environmentally friendly aircraft systems. David's reputation from his work at Boeing helped them land their first few contracts, but it was their innovative solutions that made the company grow. The year breakthrough came when David's team developed a revolutionary new engine design that not only improved fuel efficiency but also significantly reduced noise pollution. Major airlines around the world began adopting their technology, and Chen Aerospace Solutions transformed from a small startup into a major player in the aerospace industry. Success brought wealth that David could never have imagined as a child. His company went public, making him worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He bought his mother a beautiful house in a safe neighborhood and made sure she never had to work multiple jobs again. Li Wei often marveled at how far they had come from those difficult nights when she used to drop David at the airport. But with all his success, David never forgot where he came from. He established a scholarship program for children from low-income families who showed promise in science and engineering. He donated millions to schools in underserved communities, and he never stopped thinking about Rosa. David had tried to find her many times over the years. He hired private investigators and contacted airport management repeatedly. He even started a social media campaign with the hashtag #FindRosa that gained thousands of shares. But Phoenix Sky Harbor was enormous. Employee records were confidential and Rosa Gonzalez was a common name. Every lead turned into a dead end. The search became more urgent as David's success grew. He wanted to share his achievements with the woman who had started it all. He wanted to tell her that the hungry boy she had fed with her own lunch had kept his promise. He wanted to show her that her kindness had rippled outward, touching thousands of lives through his work and philanthropy. David's company now employed over 2,000 people worldwide. His engine designs were used by airlines on every continent. He had been featured on magazine covers and had spoken at conferences in dozens of countries. But none of these achievements felt complete without being able to thank the person who had made it all possible. On quiet evenings in his penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, David would stand by the windows and watch planes taking off from Logan Airport. He would touch the silver cross at his throat and remember sitting in gate A15, sharing soup with a kind cleaning lady who had treated him like family when he needed it most. "Someday I'm going to come back," he had told Rosa that last night at the airport. "And when I do, I'm going to take you flying in the most beautiful airplane you've ever seen." That promise had stayed with him through every challenge, every success, every milestone in his remarkable journey. But first he had to find her. David's latest attempt to locate Rosa was his most comprehensive yet. He had hired the best private investigation firm in the country and given them unlimited resources. They were systematically checking every possible lead, every employment record they could legally access, every connection to the Phoenix area. 3 weeks earlier, he had received the call he had been hoping for during all these years. "Mr. Chen, we found her." Rosa Gonzalez, now 66 years old, still worked the night shift at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, Terminal 4. She was planning to retire in 3 months. She lived alone in a small apartment and sent money to family members in Mexico. She was exactly where she had been 12 years ago, still cleaning the same gates, still taking care of travelers who barely noticed her existence. David immediately began planning his return to Phoenix. This wouldn't be a simple visit. This would be a homecoming, a completion of the circle that had started with a hungry boy and a generous heart. He arranged for his private jet, contacted airport officials, and even reached out to local news stations. After 12 years of searching, David Chen was finally going home to keep his promise to the woman who had changed his life with nothing more than kindness and belief in a child's impossible dreams. Tuesday morning dawned, clear and bright over Phoenix. with the kind of desert sky that made the mountains look like they were painted against blue canvas. At the private aviation section of Sky Harbor Airport, ground crews were preparing for the arrival of a sleek corporate jet. The plane belonged to Chen Aerospace Solutions, and its passenger was coming home after 12 long years away. David Chen sat in the leather seat of his Gulfstream G650, watching familiar landmarks appear below as they descended toward Phoenix. His hands were shaking slightly, and he couldn't remember the last time he had felt this nervous. Not during his first presentation to Boeing executives, not when he pitched investors for his startup, not even when his company went public. But today, he was about to see Rosa again. He touched the silver cross at his throat, a gesture that had become automatic over the years whenever he needed courage or comfort. In just a few hours, he would be able to tell Rosa that he had kept his promise. He hadn't given up on his dreams, and he had never forgotten the woman who had believed in him when he was just a hungry kid with impossible ambitions. David had coordinated this surprise carefully. Airport management knew he was coming. Security had been briefed, and even the local news stations were standing by. But Rosa knew nothing. She was going to start her shift tonight the same way she had for thousands of nights before, pushing her cleaning cart through Terminal 4, never imagining that her life was about to change forever. At 8:30 p.m., Rosa arrived for work as usual. Her back ached more than it used to, and she moved a little slower than she had 12 years ago, but she still took pride in her job. 3 months until retirement, she reminded herself as she checked in and collected her supplies. 3 months and then she could rest. She started her routine in the familiar pattern, cleaning restrooms first, then moving through the gate areas. When she reached the section around gate A15, she paused as she always did. This spot held so many memories of David, the sweet boy who had filled her evenings with purpose and hope. She wondered not for the first time what had become of him. Around 9:15 p.m., Rosa was approached by her supervisor, Janet, who looked unusually excited about something. "Rosa, I need you to come with me. There's a special situation in gate A15 area that requires your attention." Rosa was confused. In 12 years, she had never been called away from her normal duties for a special situation. But she followed Janet obediently, pushing her cart behind her. As they approached gate A15, Rosa noticed a small crowd gathered near the windows. There were people with cameras, airport officials in suits, and security guards forming a loose perimeter. In the center of it all stood a tall, well-dressed man in an expensive suit, looking out at the tarmac where planes were lined up like sleeping giants. "Rosa," Janet said softly, "there's someone here who wants to see you." The man turned around, and Rosa's world stopped spinning. Even though he was taller now, broader in the shoulders with the confident bearing of a successful businessman, Rosa knew those eyes immediately. They were the same intelligent, kind eyes that had looked up at her 12 years ago from a hungry 10-year-old boy. "David?" she whispered, hardly believing what she was seeing. "Hello, Rosa," David said, and his voice cracked with emotion. "I told you I'd come back." Rosa dropped her cleaning supplies and pressed her hands to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. This couldn't be real. The thin, worried child she remembered had grown into this confident, successful man. But then she saw it, the glint of silver at his throat where her mother's cross still hung. "Mijo," she breathed. "My David, you came back." David walked toward her, and Rosa could see that he was crying too. The cameras were rolling, the officials were watching, but in that moment it was just the two of them. Just like those quiet nights 12 years ago when they had shared soup and dreams under the bright terminal lights. They embraced in the middle of the terminal, and Rosa felt like she was holding her own grandson. David had grown so much, accomplished so much, but in her arms he was still the boy who had promised her he wouldn't give up on his dreams. "I kept my promise," David whispered into her ear. "I kept my promise, Rosa. I never gave up, and I never forgot you." When they finally stepped apart, David began to tell Rosa about his journey. He spoke about MIT, about his work at Boeing, about starting his own company. He told her about the engines he had designed, the patents he held, the thousands of people his company employed around the world. "But none of it means anything without being able to share it with you," David said. "You started all of this, Rosa. That first night when you gave me your sandwich, when you saw a hungry kid and decided to help, that changed everything." Rosa shook her head in amazement. "I just gave you some food, mijo. You did all the hard work. No, David said firmly. You gave me much more than food. You gave me hope. You gave me someone who believed I could be more than my circumstances. You gave me love when I needed it most. David reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Rosa, I want you to have this. With trembling hands, Rosa opened the envelope. Inside was a check, but the number of zeros made no sense to her. She looked up at David in confusion. This is enough money so you never have to work another day if you don't want to, David explained. This is enough to retire comfortably, to visit your family in Mexico whenever you want, to live in a beautiful house with a garden. Rosa stared at the check, overwhelmed. David, this is too much. I can't accept this. You can and you will, David said with a smile. But that's not all. I've also started a foundation in your name. The Rosa Gonzalez Foundation will provide scholarships and support for children from low-income families who want to study science and engineering. Your kindness is going to help thousands of kids achieve their dreams, just like you helped me achieve mine. The crowd around them had grown larger. Other airport employees had gathered to witness this incredible reunion. Rosa saw Miguel, the security guard who had watched her feed David all those years ago. He was wiping tears from his eyes. There's one more thing, David said. He turned toward the large windows that faced the tarmac and pointed to a beautiful aircraft parked in the distance. Do you see that plane, Rosa? Rosa looked where he was pointing. There was a gleaming white jet with blue trim, larger and more elegant than any plane she had seen up close. That's my plane, David said, and I have a promise to keep. I told you that someday I would take you flying in the most beautiful airplane you've ever seen. Would you like to go for a ride? Rosa's eyes widened. You want me to go up in that plane? But I've never flown before. I'm scared. David took her hands gently. Do you remember what you told me 12 years ago? You said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going even when you are scared. Will you be brave with me, Rosa? Rosa looked around at all the faces watching them. Airport employees, officials, reporters, and strangers who had stopped to witness this extraordinary moment. Then she looked back at David, this remarkable man who had once been her hungry boy with impossible dreams. Yes, she said with a trembling smile. Yes, I'll go flying with you. An hour later, Rosa found herself seated in the luxurious cabin of David's private jet, looking out the window as Phoenix spread below them like a blanket of lights. David sat across from her, explaining how the engines worked, pointing out the engineering marvels that made flight possible. Can you believe this, Rosa? David asked as they soared through the night sky. A poor kid who used to sit in an airport terminal is now flying in his own plane with the woman who saved his life. Rosa shook her head in wonder. I still can't believe any of this is real. You really did it, David. You became an engineer, just like you dreamed. We did it, David corrected her. This success belongs to both of us. Every plane I design, every engine I create, every life I touch through my work, it all traces back to that first night when you shared your sandwich with a hungry boy. As they flew over the desert, David told Rosa about his mother, Li Wei, who now lived comfortably in California, and often spoke about the kind cleaning lady who had helped her son. He told her about the schools his foundation had built, the scholarships it provided, and the hundreds of young engineers who were following in his footsteps. Your kindness didn't just change my life, Rosa, David said. It created ripples that you're still spreading. Every person my company employs, every student my foundation helps, every family that benefits from cleaner, more efficient air travel, they're all connected to what you did for a 10-year-old boy 12 years ago. When they landed back in Phoenix 2 hours later, Rosa was a different woman than the one who had started her shift that evening. She was no longer just a night shift janitor nearing retirement. She was Rosa Gonzalez, the woman whose simple act of kindness had changed the world in ways she was only beginning to understand. As David walked her to the car that would take her to her new life, Rosa stopped and looked back at the terminal where they had first met. Thank you, she said to David. Thank you for keeping your promise. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for believing in me when I was just a hungry kid with big dreams, David replied. Thank you for showing me that kindness has the power to transform lives. Thank you for giving me hope when I needed it most. They hugged one more time under the desert stars, two people whose lives had intersected in the most beautiful way possible. Rosa touched the space at her throat where her mother's cross had once hung, and she knew that love, like kindness, never truly disappears. It just finds new ways to shine its light in the world. The story of the airport janitor and the hungry boy would be told in news reports and shared on social media around the globe. But for Rosa and David, it wasn't a news story. It was a testament to the truth they had both learned, that the smallest acts of love can create the most extraordinary transformations, and that dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, have the power to take flight when someone believes in them completely.